Why is American security apparently for sale? There is outrage tonight over the news that a country connected to 9/11 is taking over 6 ports here in the United States. Former CIA Director James Woolsey. We also have Congressman Peter King and Arsalan Iftikhar of the Council on American Islamic Relations. That there is no way we should have ever turned our ports, especially in New York and New Jersey, over to the United Arab Emirates.
Well, I personally don't think that we should have turned it over to a foreign government to begin with. And I think that if you want to look at the actual policies involved, we should look at why we outsource our ports to any foreign government, regardless of the ethnicity or the region where these companies take place.
Well, what about their record on terrorism, though? I mean, there's a big difference between turning it over to, say, Belgium and the UAE.
Well, I think what's important to understand here is that what this is necessarily doing is it's demonizing the entire world Muslim population for the acts of a few French terrorists.
No, wait a second. No, wait. No, we're talking about a country that the Associated Press is reporting was the staging ground for 9/11 for many of these terrorists, a country that also allowed nuclear parts to go to North Korea, to go to Iran, to go to Libya. Hey, I'm like the director. Hold on a second. If China were to get this deal, I would be equally horrified. This has nothing to do with ethnicity. This has to do with terrorists, with governments that we don't want running our ports.
Well, I mean,
are you really saying that I'm a racist, that I'm against Arabs, because I want New York's port to be run by a country that's democratic?
Well, I mean, we have to clarify a few things here. First of all, none of these port security operations are being given over to this country. The Department of Homeland Security is still going to have full autonomy when it comes to security at the ports. This company is going to basically hire the longshoremen, many of whom are card-carrying members of the AFL-CIO, basically just to run a business. I mean, so essentially, what these politicians are saying with their knee-jerk responses, I mean, if they were really concerned about national security, you could walk up to the Speaker of the House. Congress has been in session 5 days since January 1st, saying we need to vote on this because our national security is threatened.
All right, Congressman King, that sounds like a challenge to you. Sounds like a challenge to the Speaker. Are you just
I said I will hold hearings on
loose?
No, Jack, Joe, I've said that I would hold hearings on this. Having said that, under the law, as Director Woolsey said, this is a relic from the Cold War age, and it's a secret process which Congress is not even made aware of until the entire process is over. That's the problem we're facing. What I'm doing is calling on the President, though, is to set in motion a 45-day extension so that there can be a full investigation. But I do intend to hold hearings and do intend to go after this. But the fact is the 9/11 Commission said that the government failed to show imagination. They have to show some imagination here in working with this existing statute until we can change it to prevent countries and companies from taking this over. And I agree with Director Woolsey. This isn't just because they happen to be from an Arab country. This would be true if it came from any dictatorial country. And there's the danger, because then you have, if one dictator falls, another one comes in, and the second one may not be so friendly. And even though they are not handling security per se, they will have to interface with the people who do security for the United States at the ports, which means they will learn all about our security measures and procedures. And if you have somebody working for Al-Qaeda in that company, you will give them the keys to our security. And that, to me, is too dangerous a price to pay after what happened to us on 9/11.
And Director Woolsey, shouldn't Congress, shouldn't these local leaders have some sort of review in this process post 9/11?
I think the Congress and the administration ought to use this as an opportunity to come together and put together a statute that makes sense in the post 9/11 world. This old Cold War era statute, the administration has discovered that the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act is not a good tool, and I agree with them on this, to handle battlefield surveillance, essentially, of the sort they have been doing with the National Security Agency intercepts. They recognize how obsolete FISA is. This statute is equally obsolete, and instead of using it, they ought to focus on how to get it fixed.
Director, the deal was approved by a committee of 12 people that was headed by Treasury Secretary John Snow. Here's what his department had to say, quote, "Clearly no responsibility of government is more important than protecting the national security." And they went on, of course, to justify it. But I got to tell you, Director Woolsey, it sort of reminded me back in like 97, 98, when Bill Clinton was allowing L'Oreal to pass missile technology onto China. Again, does it not seem a fair complaint by many Americans that we appear to be putting financial needs of, let's say, Wall Street over the better interests of our national security in America?
That's kind of the world the statute was created in, and it has a very limited reach. It's only really to check up on security procedures, and that committee almost never, using the criteria in the statute, that committee almost never turns anything down. They just delay it, and sometimes it's withdrawn, any of these applications for acquisition. They need a new statute that deals with the problems the congressman is talking about, and they ought to use this as a chance to come together and work together in the country's interests instead of just arguing with one another.
Arsalan, I want to see if we can agree on something. Would you agree with me that we'd be safer as a country if Great Britain had this responsibility instead of, say, communist China?
Well, I think it's in our best interest to have an American company protect the ports. I mean, I think that, you know, if you want to change this archaic law, as Director Woolsey would like us to do, then we should revisit whether or not we will outsource any of our ports to any foreign country, regardless of who they are. Keep it domestic. I'm sure, you know, we have American shipping magnates here. We have the Coast Guard here, whose mission it is to protect our ports. I think that it's important.
But why does it have to be all or nothing, though? I mean, again, I think you and I both know that Great Britain would be a much safer bet for this type of job than UAE or China or Libya.
Well, Joe, I mean...
Actually, Joe, if I can interject for a second on that, Joe, the fact is that it was a British company that had this contract for the last 5 years, and that British company was taken over by the UAE company. So it was worked, and it worked very well under the British company for the last 5 years.
And the last time around, American companies didn't bid, Joe. That was the problem. It ended up with the British companies fine with me, but there wasn't a market. The American companies didn't try to operate the ports.
Right. The foreign companies have been operating ports in the United States since the year 2000. I think that what's important to keep in mind is, you know, we talk about free trade and democratizing other parts of the world. I think that there is no better way to democratize than to increase contacts and not decrease them, you know, just based on, you know, this industry of fear.
I think we can have plenty of contact with the UAE without turning our ports over to it.
Yeah, I agree, Director Woolsey. Thank you so much.
Turning them over.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Director Woolsey, Peter King, and Arsalan. Greatly appreciate it.